buenas. Welcome, everyone. My name is Beatriz Vieira, and my pronouns are she, her, and ella. I'm with the Women's Foundation of California, so welcome to this very special gathering of Leading with the Heart. Bienvenidas a todas a nuestra reunión, esa oportunidad de estarnos juntas en Liderando con el Corazón. Welcome also to our colleague Sandy Juárez, que está trabajando con nosotras para que puedan participar en español. Thank you so much to Sandy Juárez, who is providing translation for those who want to participate in Spanish. We have a very, very special gathering today with Minh Phan from Porridge Puffs in LA. This is a very special opportunity to think about food and how we literally nourish ourselves, but also how spiritually we nourish ourselves, and thinking of care, the care of ourselves and the care of our communities, and how we gather around food. So I am going to very quickly pass to my colleague Hong Nguyen Yap, who will be helping shepherd the conversation and the program for tonight. Hong?
Hong, you're muted.
Yes, after several months, I thought we would figure this out by now. Hong Nguyen Yap, she, hers, with the Women's Foundation of California, Director of Investment. I am so excited to be in conversation tonight with Minh Phan. Food and community are both things I love, and they bring me joy and healing and nurture. And so during this pandemic, it's been challenging to not be in physical community with my network and my friends and colleagues, but we are finding ways in other ways to be creative and be in community. And so I'm going to keep Minh's introduction short so we can get into conversation and then move on to the more exciting piece, which are the recipes tonight. Minh Phan, chef and community activist, is the owner of Porridge Puffs in LA's historic Filipino town. Chef Minh's food builds on her relationship with food purveyors, farmers, and other chefs, with an emphasis on supporting women's developing role in the food-making communities. Welcome in. Thank you so much for sharing your time and talents with us. Can you start by sharing a little bit about who you are and how that informs your philosophy around food and being a business owner?
Yeah, I'm Minh Phan, she, her. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you, the Women's Foundation, and everyone else joining. I think some of our diners here, so I welcome all of you. This is such an honor to get to spend time with you guys, so thank you. And then to delve deep into it, I own a restaurant called Porridge Puffs. People rarely hear the origin story. I am I'm not a very direct person. I like things theoretically, and I like ephemeral things. So Porridge Puffs is a very odd name for a restaurant, even for me. It's very direct. People like it. People know what it is. It started off as a project that we started at our old restaurant about 5 years ago. Almost exactly, 5 years ago, I had a restaurant called Field Trip at the Farmer's Kitchen. It was a partnership with CLA, who runs the farmers market at the Hollywood Farmers Market. And they had a space. We partnered up with them and had the space. I presented the idea of porridge to them, and one of the edicts was to use all farmers market ingredients to celebrate the market and to make that connection. And I presented this idea of porridge to them, and they kind of just laughed. I'm like, what? That's crazy. And so that restaurant ended up being a farm-to-table restaurant, which is very much in line with I've thought of my takes and my touches on there, but in the back of my mind, I always knew, what, I'm going to bring this little porridge idea. So I kind of did it underground. I said, it fits in with the market. It's the best way to use all these ingredients. So therefore, I'm just going to do this as a pop-up. and just play around. I was telling people, I'm like, it's just my way of playing with all the grains at the market. I can celebrate Robin Coda Farms because, she's at the market, and, the grain movement was coming into its own, or just starting. So I said, I can play with all those grains, and porridge at its basic is liquid and grains. So I'm like, I can start there, and then the toppings can be everything from the farmer's market. So that's how I got started. And then Jonathan Gold walked in the first day of service, and then he walked in 8 more times and wrote about it. And then it really changed the trajectory of the restaurant. It was really great. And then when we went away, I didn't know if I was going to revive it, but there was such, we had such great support from our community. So I wanted to really carry the idea through another restaurant to make sure it is, just to give it a chance. So we kept the name because people were familiar with it. And now we're in a really interesting place because the restaurant that we knew as of March 15th no longer exists. And I honestly don't know if it will ever exist. But the spirit of the restaurant is stronger than ever. With everything going on in the world, our team is living our mission, our ethos, our values more than ever. Our restaurant is first and foremost a place to steward our values. We wear our values on our, we wear it everywhere. And we talk about everything as a team. And frankly, it's the only way I would have a restaurant. Having a restaurant is financially probably one of the dumbest and least financially responsible things. It's very hard. You feel like no matter what you do, you feel like you're abusing your workers because they get paid so little. And it's a system. It's something we talk about. It's just there's no way we can get people to pay more for food, especially our food, especially being an Asian woman, a Vietnamese American woman. It's just there's so many expectations. So we're hoping to change some of that slowly. And I think with everything going on in the world, with the pandemic, with racial inequities, with gender inequities, with people, just a lot of uncovering of who people are and what people stand for. I think the way it's for us, it's like really awesome because we're like, you know what? There's this book on how a chef should be, how a kitchen should be, how a restaurant should be, because this is what success is to people. And for a long time I said, no, it's not. It doesn't feel right. I'm not building a team like that. And now I feel like stronger than ever. We're like, yeah, you know what? None of it works. It's like, so we've had a chance, I think, to really build something that we love, and I hope that our team gets to continue building that.
Yeah, it's great to hear from that perspective of a woman business owner about kind of where you want to see the industry go. We talk a lot about that within the Women's Foundation as well as our partners about, how the world, the business can't go on as usual. So I don't know if you have given it some thought, but maybe you can share a little bit about what some of those shifts might look like, or what you're hoping some of those shifts would look like as a woman business owner, holding the values that you have.
I think first and foremost, the word business is really hard for me. I think people, when they think of businesses, they put us in the same bucket as Amazon or as Shake Shack or anything. It's a restaurant, it's a business, and we frankly are not. So I don't know. I think it's a bigger systematic thing of how we look at restaurants, independent restaurants that are cause-driven restaurants, cause-driven businesses, and how are, I tell myself all the time, like, we should not be a for-profit restaurant. We should really make this a place where what we do, that we should be available for grants. Because we provide a service to the community, and it frees us up. Or even if we had universal health care or any universal benefits, I think it would free us up to do what we do better. Crunching numbers is a really, really hard part of my job. Every time I crunch numbers, I'm like, we might as well just shut this place down. But we're very lucky because we have a lot of women. We have a lot of magical women in our community who are diners, who are mentors, who come to our rescue quite often. So your question again, Hung, ask me the question. I get lost a lot because I'm constantly thinking about this stuff in my head.
Just what are your hopes for what's next, whether it's to continue your this community as it is, or how do you envision some of the shifts that you would that could support the vision that you have?
Well, you know what? I think it's a good time to share with this group of women. It's something that I do not want published anywhere. So keep it to yourselves, people. But my goal is to continue doing what we're doing by stewarding our values. And any shape that it takes, I'm pretty happy with it. But I think the food system, the way it is, the way the restaurant is, completely broken. I can't go back there. My team can't go back there. You know, and we have to be really honest with ourselves, because on one hand, we fight for equal pay. We fight for $15 minimum, which is like not very much to live off of. But you know, restaurant workers don't make that much. And how can we be progressive and say we want all these things and then not pay more for food? And so I think that's something that our team's going to spend time talking to people about. It's going to break some hearts. It's going to get us horrible Yelp reviews. But I think if we were to continue forward, we really have to stick with our gut and really talk about the food system. And if we want it to continue, we have to pay people more than what we're paying now, even for us. And so for me, I spent a lot of time thinking about the operations. I wish I spent all my time thinking about menus and ingredients, because that's my dream. But for the most part, since the pandemic, I spent a lot of my time thinking about the operations of the place and how do we coexist with our values. And our values get more concrete every day and more precise, which is really awesome, because you know it's like it evolves. We have always been a pro, you know, women of color place, but even then we have to when George Floyd got murdered, we we were very much, yeah, the system sucks, but we had to ask ourselves, like, why don't we have any Black women on our team? Like, what opportunities can we create? So we have to do that work as well. And I think doing that work and continuing that work. What's great about my team, though, let's put it this, I'm a Gen Xer. My teams are all millennials and millennials, and they're very radical. They push back a lot. And I welcome it. It's like such an honor to be led by them in that way. And it's an honor to lead them in the practicality and, show them numbers. But I think that's a very different way of doing business. I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. I'm not going to mention anything specific, but in the restaurant world, it's always from top down. You get, you work your ass off so you get to the top. You take that credit, you build it, you work very, very hard. And there's not a lot of equity. And for me, I'm really trying to build a business. I hope my goal is to look at business operations differently, to make it a more equitable place. I want to look into B corporations. I want to look into co-ops. I want to play with that going forward. Does it mean we still serve porridge? I don't know. Does it mean we do something where we can actually have, a better, can do more of what we want? Maybe. But what does that look like? And are people going to be, consumers going to be okay with it? So that's kind of where we are moving forward. I think we're just kind of flowing right now. Like we throw a lot of stuff. I think what happened for the last 3.5 months, is we reacted as a restaurant. We reacted so much. It's like, oh, the pandemic. Okay, people need produce. We have farmers who don't have a place to distribute this because the farmers market is closed. So how do we immediately take care of that? Okay, you know what? We can get to the market. We can connect people. They can safely come here. We can make sure we process it, and we can curate process. So we immediately reacted to that. Oh, you know what? Frontliners need to be fed. You know what? We're working. We have all this food. We have all this time now that the restaurant's so slow. We can provide that need. So I think we keep reacting. Did not look at the bottom line. Completely irresponsible. But it was the right thing to do. I think what's missing in the society a lot is we look at the bottom line too much rather than looking at everything holistically. And for me, I felt like it's a good decision that, we did look at the bottom line, because I would never have done all the things that we needed to do as a community to keep going. But we reacted, frontliners here, protesters there, homeless here. So we're constantly moving back and forth and just trying to take care of everyone, putting Band-Aids on everyone, but the one thing that we missed out on, and I tell my team this all the time, we made 3 really amazing decisions that no one knows about. Of course, like all the public ones are great. We support Black Lives Matter, we support some everything, we support all these organizations. But the 3 decisions we made that were the best, the 2 busiest days of business for us during that time was Mother's Day and Father's Day. We closed both days. We told our team, you know what? It's not worth it. People can go eat somewhere else. We don't have to put the stress on us. And then the third thing we did, so those 2 days are 2 things. And the third thing we did was we did this thing called pause. About 3.5 weeks ago, we were just moving and moving, and it was so hard. And restaurants just opened. People can dine in, and it was heartbreaking for us, because we've worked so hard to make everything so safe. And when quarantine happened, we quarantined our whole team. We talked as a team. We talked to each single individual, and we asked them who they were living with. Are they any immune compromised family members? Are they living with anyone who's working in nursing or nursing home? Because we wanted to protect our customers and ourselves. So we actually, Chef Connie, on our team, was living with her mom and her sister. But her sister is a frontline worker, works in a nursing home. So we're like, Connie, we hate to do this, but we don't know if this is going to work. And she moved out. She quarantined. She didn't see her family just to work with us. And so we of all of our team members, Tracy has their grandmother didn't see her. I have older parents, didn't get to see my parents. Naomi didn't see her parents. So this is our team. We didn't get to see any, and then, so we were on the strict quarantine the whole time, because we always wear a mask, we glove everything, we wash our hands, we take care of each other. It was really daunting when everyone's opening up. We're like, why did we just do this? Why did we put our whole team under so much stress? And we check in, and it's like health and wellness checked every day. It was exhausting. You can imagine coming in every day and people like, how are you feeling? And you're fine. But you're like, how are you feeling? Are you sure? It's exhausting. And so I think 3.5 weeks ago, I said, this is it. We need to stop. So we stopped, and we just said, let's pause, go get tested, go see your family, get tested again, and then we'll regroup. And it's the best thing ever. You never do this. Yeah, you don't get to do this in a normal business, because people have no idea what our hours are. And we get so many phone calls, and people are upset. Like, when are you opening? What are you serving? And I said, you know what, give me a minute to take care of everyone. Because people thought it was a business decision, but really it was a self-care decision. And then we came back, and, we sat there, and we're like, do we go full force again? And I said, no, you know what? Let's cook what we want to cook. Let's give people a little joy. Let's not go back to just servicing and giving people comfort food because that's what they want. Let's bring some joy into the world. So last week we started a 5-course. It's $50 a person, a little bit more than what we usually would charge. But it's worth so much more, because we've researched it. It gives us like with the fake pickles we're making today, it gives us a chance to R&D, to research and develop new recipes. It gives us a chance to look at food. We look at the menu and development through maybe 5 different filters. For us, first and foremost, is seasonality. Is it in season? Can you get it? Is it good for the environment? So that's seasonality. The second thing is there something that's being wasted that we can save? We do that all day. It's really important. Is it a stem? Is it something that we find in compost that shouldn't be in the compost? That inspires us a lot. The third thing is can we make, this is really delicious and we made one, can we now make 50 of them? Or how many can we make? So those are the practicalities of our kitchen. And then we always ask ourselves, is it creative? Is it interesting? Is it a different take? And what's the story on it? What's driving us to make this dish? So those are things we always ask. But I think during the pandemic, we were just moving so fast and we're just pulling things that we were used to and comforting, and we didn't develop a lot. So we took
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. I want to make sure that we have enough time for you to kind of share your talents with us. But, you know, I think thank you so much for sharing kind of like how you've taken care of your team. Because when we started this series of Leading the Heart, it was really with that in mind, was how do we take care of one another? Because a lot of the women on this call, women identifying non-conforming folks on this call, they're reacting. We have to take care of the communities that we're part of. And so we often don't have time to slow down and to really find joy, kind of what you were sharing about creating joy for your team. So, you know, as you transition into showing us your dishes, if you can talk a little bit as well about just the self-care that, you know, I think within the industry and how the power of food and community and how that plays into, I think, taking care of one another. And so, you know, I want to, for those that are on the call, if you change to speaker view, you'll be able to see a full picture of Min, and you'll be able to see her kitchen as well, just as a tip as we start to transition into that. But if you can speak a little bit about just the power of food and healing and self-care.
Okay. Should I go? Should I wait?
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay, we're in my kitchen in Echo Park, which I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't cook in. My partner and our daughter cooks in this kitchen a lot more than I do. I cook at work. My partner teaches. He's an anthropologist. He comes home and he tries not to be an anthropologist and analyze everything. And I try to come home and not cook it, you know, try to cook. It makes us enjoy our work a lot more. But I think, should I just dive into what we're cooking today? Yeah. I'm gonna go, you know what, my two favorite things in the whole world to cook. I'm just gonna talk about ratios, and then there's one specific recipe I'm gonna go through as an example of it. The first one, first and foremost, we make porridge. There's no secret to porridge. Porridge is liquid and grain, but that can be anything. I'm gonna take a step back. I think I'm gonna talk about pickles I'm talking about porridge for half of a second. I'm gonna swap our agenda. Originally I was gonna talk about pickling first, but I'm gonna talk about porridge first because I'm not gonna make it for you guys because I just wanna just gloss over it because I think we're short on time and I actually wanted to walk you guys through a pickling recipe. So porridge, you guys, it's a great way to use waste leftovers. It's a great way. The reason I love porridge is I love it so much, but when I was young, I only got to eat it twice a year. I got to eat it the day after Thanksgiving, and I got to eat it when I was sick. And the day after Thanksgiving, because there was always some carcass, turkey, ham, and my mom would turn that into rice porridge. And it was my favorite thing. And then when we were sick, we got porridge, but it was super bland. And that wasn't fun either. That wasn't really fun. So I wanted to eat Thanksgiving porridge every day. And that's why I have a porridge shop, because that way you can infuse flavor into something that's very easy to eat. I love soups. I love liquidy things. So porridge is very easy at its basic level. It's liquid and grains. It can be any kind of grain. It can be oats. It can be, it can be barley. It can be rye, it can be wheat, it can be any of these things. As long as you mix those two things together or some sort of starch and liquid, that's a porridge. You've had porridge a million times. If you say you don't like porridge, then I feel really sorry for you. Because porridge is risotto, porridge is grits. I'm Vietnamese, porridge is chow. Those are all porridges. If you are really, really lucky in life, it's the very first thing you eat, period. And if you're really even more lucky than that, it's going to be the last thing you eat. That means you live a really long life where your teeth, you don't have the same teeth anymore, but you still get to eat really great food. And so porridge, my quick lesson on porridge is make it the way you want. In order to make, you can go super simple with leftover fried rice, adding a little chicken stock or vegetable stock, or even some distilled water, and just cook it until it's soft, and then add in any sauces, any condiments you have in your fridge. I always tell people when we cook, when we pack people, we've been packing people like a lot of leftovers when we cook for them, especially 5 course. save those condiments that you plate with, because those go all really well in porridge. Any kind of dressing, sauces, they're really great. Or you can either put them on top or you can blend them in. But I think, keep your porridge questions, because I'm going to answer all of them. The ratio, people always ask, how much water do you put? And I say, as much as you want. I like to start things a little thicker and then thin them out. Because when it's too thin, you can't change it. When porridge is too thin, you can't make it thicker unless you put more grains in, then it's not going to cook right. It's a mess. So always start with a less liquid. If you're going from leftovers, I usually do 2 parts liquid, 1 part whatever that, fried rice, or, sometimes, it's like, I'm trying to think, like, farro, any kind of grains that, any kind of grain bowls you have can become easily porridge. If you're starting from fresh, I like to start with a ratio of 4 to 1. And do you start hot or cold? Sometimes you start hot and sometimes you start cold. The secret to our rice is we start cold. Because what happens is we don't wash the rice. I am a stickler when it comes to cooking rice. You wash it until you're clean if I'm making rice, because I like a really pearly, clean, non-starchy rice. I want to taste rice for what it is, and it's super sweet, but not too sweet. But when I make porridge, I use a high-quality rice where I know I don't have to wash. We use Cobra Farms rice exclusively because it's grown in California, and I also know that it's a rice I don't have to wash. The reason that's really important, because we use Cocoa Rose rice. I was too lazy to carry a big bag home because it was really heavy, so I just carried a small bag, but we didn't have any small bags. But this is Cobra Farms. And the rices, you can trust them, so therefore you can start straight from water, and then we start with cold. Because the reason we start with cold is it's basically soaking while it's cooking. By the time it comes up to a boil, it's been soaking. So it's like taking, I always describe it as like, it's kind of blooming. It's kind of taking its time instead of rushing it to, like, if you throw something in hot water, it's almost like boiling it or frying it or shocking it. I don't like shocking the rice. I like giving, I let rice take its time to open up. So that's blooming. It's the process is we cook that, we let it bloom in stock in a very concentrated stock, and then we let it sit overnight. We put it away, and it continues to absorb all the liquid. And, no matter how much liquid you put in rice, it absorbs it all. And what happens is, as it absorbs liquid, the flavor gets better and better. It gets sweeter and sweeter and creamier and creamier. So that's just the secret to porridge. And then if it's too thick, we like our porridges pretty thick. We always, when we train our team, we said, think of it as risotto-like. But sometimes, I'm going to give you guys a secret. When we sell our porridge at work, it's pretty thick. But when I take that porridge home, I add a lot more stock and broth, because I like it a little thinner. And I like to stretch my food a little bit too. But people should buy our porridge is such a value. Like how much stuff goes into that. And then so you can do the same thing. You can make a really thick porridge, and then you can thin it out and eat it every morning. So that's the porridge part. I'm going to go straight into the thing that I like to make most in the whole world after porridge. Actually, I probably like this more than porridge, is pickles. I love acid. I love brightening dishes in an interesting way, and that's usually done with acid. And acid means an interesting element. Vinegar is the #1 source of acid that we use, except for we use a lot of citrus. We do use a lot of citrus, but I'm always trying to find interesting ways to add acid, because porridge is very flat. It's very, it's starchy, it's sweet. You need something to bring the flavors out, and it makes it easier to digest. It's a better balance. Vinegary, pickly, fermented food is really good for you. I'm sure you guys have heard that plenty. I just think it helps balance your gut when you eat. When you eat so much starch, you need things to kind of all work out and play well with each other and help you digest that. So pickles are awesome. We have a meeting every week with our team. Which pickles are we doing this week? What are we doing? We have a tea salad that we put new pickles on all the time. I'm sorry for everyone who loves our tea salad. It's on pause right now. But we're bringing it back this weekend, but it helps us look at nature and what's happening in nature. Pickling, I'm gonna give you the super basics. What is pickling? Pickling is infusing acid into ingredients. It could be using citrus, it can be using citrus acid. Our preferred way is using vinegars, and so many different kinds of vinegars. The difference, we do a lot of fermentation and pickling, two different things. Fermentation is usually a lacto process where you let it sit, you put salt on, you let the bacteria work. We do that at the restaurant, but we're kind of quiet about it, and we're very specific in what we do because sometimes we don't, with everything going on in the world, I'm sure you guys have read, but HACCP plans are really important, making sure that how does our little place test to make sure it's safe. I feel pretty safe when we eat fermented foods, but we don't do it as often unless I know for a fact that recipe is pretty solid. I will do it on experimental stuff, but everyday use, we tend to do pickles because we know the acid level, we know that there's no bad bacteria in it. We use plenty of koji, but we are very careful about all our fermentation. We test it for pH levels. We test it for bacteria, and if we did that with everything we wanted to serve you guys, it would take a lot of time and energy. So, pickling's our best friend. Pickling is very nuanced, surprisingly enough. On the worksheet, I gave you guys a basic ratio of vinegar to water to sugar. We tend to use a sweet brine. So once in a while we'll use a salty brine, but for the most part we use a sweet brine. It's called a sweet brine because it's a little sweet. A lot of the things we use don't begin as being sweet, so we want to infuse, and it balances a little bit. It balances the acid, and it balances, just like everything else. Even if it's really sour, we want to balance it with the right amount of salt, the right amount of sugar, the right amount, even umami, and then definitely some pepperiness or bitterness, because those are flavors that we actually are really good for us and that we really love. So talking about the most important ingredient in pickling would be vinegar. We use plenty of grain vinegar. That's grain vinegar is just white vinegar, basic vinegar that you can get anywhere. We use it because it's neutral, it's clean, we know that it's not going to kill any, we know that there's not a lot of raw elements in it that can keep you sick. I love raw vinegar. We make a lot and we use a lot in the restaurant, but we only use it, when we do it for the public, we only use it in hot brines. Hot brine meaning we cook it up to a certain temperature. We know that everything's been killed, but the flavor still holds. And then if we are feeling really fancy, we use all different kinds of vinegars. Today's recipe, we're using rice vinegar. I'm sure you guys have seen it. I just pulled a bucket from work. We use a lot of rice vinegar. Rice vinegar is a little bit more mild than the white vinegar, so we use that a lot. It just plays well with Asian flavors, and we're known to have some Asian flavors in our food. And then we get into apple cider vinegar, which we love. So when you're making pickles, think about, if you guys want to expand your repertoire, think about, this is like 1/10 of what we have at work in regards to vinegars. We play with them a lot, not only for pickles, but for salad dressings. Here's a really pretty new one from Brightland. Kind of fancy, but they're really pretty. This is Haas from the farmer's market, apple cider. See, this one I love because it has the mother in there, and you can use that mother to make your own vinegar. If you don't, raw vinegar, usually a lot of times our raw vinegar that we make is just straight whatever peels we have. We let it sit, and it's a sugary thing, and we let the sugar start working itself. And then it'll create its own mother. But you can also buy this and add the mother to some fruit, and then you'll get your own vinegar. It's pretty reliable. I just love this kind if you guys want to find a mother. And then this one has a little bit of a mother too, and this is Rancho Gordo's pineapple. So these are some local, like Californian vinegars you can get. We also have plenty of Asian, like Chinese or Japanese vinegars in our pantry as well. We use all of these vinegars to, depending on what the fruit is or the vegetable is or the produce is. We also pickle our eggs. We also pickle meat. We pickle everything. It extends, the reason it's environmentally awesome is it extends the life of anything you have. Green figs will become either ripened figs or they'll just drop in the ground and they'll just become compost. And I don't know about you guys, but having a fig tree is awesome, but it's also super messy. So I like to take the fruit and pickle it before it gets messy. It's super hard. I'll run over the recipe with you guys in a second. So you choose a vinegar that will play well with your fruit and whatever you're using. I'm gonna stop. Do you have any questions? I feel like I'm just talking and talking.
No, I think we do have a couple questions. Let's see. I'll start with the question that's related to pickling, and there's some questions that are also related to the food industry. But the first one's, do I have to cook a beet before pickling, or can beets be pickled raw?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm gonna talk. Great, because I'm gonna talk to you guys about that. Okay. Is there any other questions that I can answer?
The other two questions are, one is, what does building equity into operations look like? And
okay,
how can we divide?
Just ask me the pickle questions.
Okay.
Is that the only one?
Okay, that's the only pickle question. And then the other one that's related to your business is, what does your business name mean?
What does our business make? Is that the question?
We'll start with what does your business name mean? Porridge and Puffs.
Okay. Oh, we'll go back to that. Okay.
Okay.
But ask me that at the end. Do you need to cook beets? That's a really easy one. So brines are either hot brines or cold brines. So beets, it depends. You know what? Some people really like raw beets. We do pickle raw beets. The way we like to cook raw beets is we like to ceviche style with a lot of citrus. The citrus will kind of cook the beets, so they still have a lot of the elements of the raw. Some people are allergic to raw beets, so we're careful. When it depends on your cut. Knife cuts in pickles is very, very important. We look at a fruit or vegetable or any kind of produce or anything that we're pickling. Our team always asks, one of the first things we ask, before we even explore, we'll explore the flavors that will go well with it, the spices, other things we want, like a companion flavoring. But one of the questions we ask ourselves that's really important is, what's the knife cut? Knife cuts are super important because depending on if it's a hot or cold brine, depending on how mushy the ingredient is, how you're going to use it, and what the ingredient is, knife cuts are super important. My favorite example of that is a carrot. People tend to cut carrots into rounds. And then for me, I don't like that cut because all the good stuff, the best part of the carrot is in the middle. You know that when you look at a carrot and the middle is like darker and it has like that ring, that's where the sweet stuff is. And if you just and then you're eating the carrot and you bite into it, it's just like the more woody, fibrous stuff, and you don't get to the good stuff in the middle. So when you see our carrots at our place, it's usually cut into what we call a fake tourneau. Tourneau is like a fancy culinary school term for making things look like a tourneau, which is like a football. And for us, we kind of do it where you expose the middle a little bit. We cut it so you will see the middle exposed, because when we roast it, that sugar will caramelize better. That part will make it really sweet. And when we make pickles, knife cuts are really important. Looking at what's the sweetest part of the fruit? If you're serving to a lot of people, like if I cut this fig, I don't know if you guys can see it. If I started cutting just this way, the person who gets this part versus the person who gets the middle, some people would feel pretty screwed. They're like, I've got all the seeds. So you think about these things as a cook, and you're like, okay, how do you make it fair? How do you make sure everyone gets some good parts? Or sometimes we only use the good parts for something. Like, what's an example of that? Watermelon. Like, only the inside of a watermelon is really good. So we'll use the best part of a watermelon, high season, we'll use it on a salad raw. It'd be awesome. But then the other parts, there's all these green parts, these white parts, we use it all. But we have to use it in a different way. So that's what we ask each other a lot when it comes to fruit. We dissect every single fruit and vegetable like this. So to answer your beet question, If you cut it big, you're gonna want a hot brine. Hot brine will help cook it. You can continue cooking. You can cook things in a hot brine. What's something we cook in a hot brine? I'm trying to think. Watermelon rinds. It's being hot is not enough for it to soak the flavor. We have to cook it hot for a little bit so it soaks up the flavor. But we always ask ourselves when we're pickling something, is it going to be a hot brine or a cold brine? If you're pickling for canning, it's always going to be a hot brine. No such thing as cold brine for canning. If you're going to put it on the shelf, not refrigerated, it's always a hot brine. That's why you don't want that's why you don't want to can everything, because if you can certain things, you'll lose the crispiness, you'll lose, the bright flavors of it. So you have to be conscious of what you're choosing to can and not can. That's why for us, it's very versatile to do quick pickles, things that we're going to keep in the fridge. We always make a decision if something's going to be hot brine, cold brine, medium brine, depending on how long we want it to cook. For beets, if you cut it big, do a hot brine, it'll still stay crispy. It's awesome. If you're cutting it super small, you can just go cold brine, put it to the cold brine, let it sit. It soaks the flavor. Okay.
There's a couple questions as you kind of finish up your pickling that's related. Is how long can you pickle vegetables last after pickling, and any books around pickling and fermenting that you might recommend?
Ooh, okay. What's the first question again?
How long can you keep pickled vegetables after pickling?
Ooh, that really depends. It can sit for quite a long time. Pickles can sit for a month, even more, depending on what it is. Like we pickle peaches sometimes, or strawberries. Those things don't last very long. They're high sugar content. They start disintegrating. If you pickle beets or jicama, it can last for a really long time. It'll stay crisp. It'll continue soaking the flavors. It'll probably last a month. But storage is super important. With pickles, if you're going to store it, if you're not going to eat it the next day or the next week, I recommend this in everything. We put pickles in a container, and usually we will put plastic wrap on it. So two things, and sometimes we'll put a plate on it to weigh it down. When you're making pickles, you want everything to be weighted down. You want everything to be below the liquid. Anything above the liquid is susceptible to mold. The liquid is what's keeping the product from becoming moldy. If you leave this out, it's going to become moldy, it's going to be dry. But if you put it in liquid and submerge it, it's going to keep it pretty well. How you take the pickles in and out of the fridge and how you pull it out is very, very important. You don't want to do it with your hands. You don't want to do it with chopsticks that you've been using on the table. You always start with sanitize, clean things. We tend to use a one-time use gloves when we're pulling something out. And then we always put a new piece of plastic wrap to make sure our process is we put a plate on it, we push it down, and then we layer a plastic wrap on it, and then we put a top on it. It's a lot of waste. We understand it's a lot of extra work, but for the amount of, it's more labor, more work for us if we have to redo or throw away something. I hate throwing away stuff. It makes me cry. So I would rather us to take care of it properly in the first place. So it depends, if you're try it out, do it for a month. If you don't see any mold and it looks exactly, if it's like if the liquid's really clear, there's nothing floating on top that you didn't see before. If you see something floating on top that you didn't see before, something grew that is not supposed to be there. I'm going to say, just to be safe with everything going on in the world, you need to throw it out. Because I don't want to get anyone in trouble. So I just think but between you and me, I would not feed it to anyone, but I taste a lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't be tasting. Because, when you work in food, mold is natural. It happens everywhere. Some of it's really good, and some of it you don't want there. And you just have to continually know what's what, and if you don't know, you just have to throw it out. Yeah, any other questions before I can go? Hot brine, cold brine. Let me review my notes to make sure I've covered everything. Oops, my computer died. So maybe you guys can ask me, because I now currently do not have my notes in front of me. So you guys can ask me questions on hot brine, cold brine, what's the difference, when to use what. I can give you a bunch of examples. A book to recommend. I wish
Maybe
I
you should write one.
You guys don't need a book. You guys, I'll just give you guys the ratios. It's a, yeah, maybe, but it's so easy. You know what I mean? It's just, I think it's I'm trying to think of a book, and I know that there's a lot of books that have good recipes, that has real, you know, I love Jeremy Fox's book on vegetables. I think there's some good pickle ideas in there. Joseph Centeno's book has some good pickles in there. They're more generic, but a pickling book. Oh, you know what? I think Kevin West had a book out on preservation that's pretty good. I have recipes randomly around that has pickles in it. Just remember you know, and I think flavoring is the most important thing. What flavor do you want? What are you trying to do with it? Are you trying to bring out sweetness? Are you trying to bring out saltiness? Are you trying to bring out, there's two things, there's flavors, right? Salty, sweet, acid, bitter, and umami. Those are the things that you're balancing. Balance those things out. What do you like? What are you serving with? You're serving with something super meaty. You want something bright and acidic. You know, that's what you want. If you're eating breakfast, if you're having a breakfast bowl of porridge, what do you want? You know, if you have an egg on it, you want something spicy, or you want something more fruity. So then usage on that. And then texture is really important. Do you want something crispy? Do you want something soft? Do you want something snappy? Do you want something woody? All these things are really important. Like, we use things that are woody and things that you chew a little while, you know, like, we play with all those textures, but we think of textures a lot when we pickle. So without further ado, I'm going to go into a very basic ratio that we use. It's on there, but I'm going to give you guys our secret of how you will always remember it. My team remembers it all the time. I call it the 5 fingers. We have 5 fingers. The basic ratio is 2 parts vinegar, 2 parts water, 1 part sugar. That's a sweet brine. So you will see in the recipe that we have, I don't have my recipe in front of me, but I believe it's 400 grams of water, 400 grams of vinegar, and 200 grams of sugar. So that's the basic ratio, and then you can play from there. If you are using a less acidic vinegar, you can use more vinegar. If you want something less acidic and your vinegar is too acidic, you can increase the amount of water, and you can reduce the amount of sugar, or you can increase the amount of sugar. And then salt is usually by taste. In the recipe, usually we do about 2 to 3% salt. Some people like 5%. It just depends on what your taste. You know, making recipes is just like cooking. It's to your taste. Season well. It's really important to use salt. I know people are anti-salt. If you have high blood pressure, totally get it. You need to do what you need to do to take care of yourself. But if it comes to taste, adding salt makes things taste better. So I highly recommend salt. People always ask me, they're like, what salt do you use? And I'm like, 99% of the time I'm using just good old kosher salt. I love, for pickling, I think kosher salt is, some people are gonna really not like this, but I like it better than sea salt. The crystals are bigger. It has no anti-caking agent, so it's pretty pure. You don't want an anti-caking agent in your pickles. And for us, the reason we use 1 brand of kosher salt and use it in everything is because that's a recipe we developed, and we want to keep it consistent as much as we can. Things are very hard to keep consistent. Just like nature, you know, ingredients change. It will have more moisture one day and dry the next. We have to accommodate that. You have early season strawberries, they're not very sweet. Late season strawberries are a lot sweeter. If you're pickling and using the same recipe, you can't. You have to alter it, alter the recipe to accommodate the produce, the ingredient. But I gave you a very simple recipe, but something that I adore so much because it's something that you don't ever see, is pickled figs and green figs. People don't think you can eat green figs. I prefer them because if you ever pick one and you just smelt it, they smell like young coconut and fresh cut grass. And oh my God, what's better than that? So I like to take sweet things and use them in savory applications. We are using these figs right now. Chef Connie made a batch, and we loved them so much we used them on our beef cheek cold noodles last week. Just because the beef cheeks are super rich and super heavy. It's the middle of summer. You know, even though they're cold noodles, we wanted something to brighten and bring the summer into your mouth, and nothing beats figs, really early season figs. Not only are we using the fruit, we're using the leaves, which is, people don't think about. When I look at a plant, I look at the whole plant. What are the leaves doing? What are the stems doing? What's the bark doing? You know, what can be used? What's toxic? What's usable? What's medicinal? What is good? You know, like a fig tree. Let's take, for example, a fig tree. This is how I look at a fig tree. I'm like, okay, early season fig tree. Okay, you have branches, you have leaves, you have early season fruit, and you have that white stuff known as milk or sap. All those things can be used. Bark, you can dry them out and use it for smoking. You can smoke meats, you can smoke eggplant, you can have an amazing summer fireplace that will smell amazing. Leaves, we use the leaves quite a bit. Leaves can be used to wrap rice cakes. We love that, and it imparts a really awesome flavor. Rice cakes, Vietnamese, Chinese rice cakes, Japanese rice cakes, Asian rice cakes are usually banana leaves or lotus leaves. I prefer fig leaves because they're California, and they're here, and when you smell it, it smells like California. So we can use the fig leaves to wrap rice and mochi. One of my favorite applications, which is for another day, is we sous vide the leaves when we make raviolis with them. Fig leaves. We also have sous vide fig leaves. Sous vide, if you guys don't know, it's not that complicated. Every single chef will make it seem so complicated because they don't want you to know their secrets. Sous vide is the easiest thing in the world. You put things in a pouch and you cook it nice and slow in hot water, retaining all the flavors. For us, fig leaves are not always edible from the start, but if you cook it long, low, and slow, it becomes very malleable and edible. So fig leaves, we use all different kinds of applications. Our latest incarnation, we smoke them, and then we braise the beef cheeks in them. And then the fruit, I'm gonna talk to you guys about the fruit and the pickling, and then finally the sap. The sap's really good for, it's like glue. You can use it as glue, but it's also really good for from using as if you need a lot of it, but it's good for making cheese as a substitute. As it's like use it as a rennet. So if you're making soft cheese like ricotta, you know you need acid. You would replace the acid amount with the milk sap, and it coagulate the milk, and therefore turn it to soft cheese, which is really amazing, and it will impart that milky, sweet coconutty smell. Okay, so getting onto our pickles. I don't have my recipe in front of me. I'm sorry, my computer died while I guess I can plug it in. How am I doing on time?
We are actually coming up on time, but we are recording, so we can, for those that can't stay on with us, we will make sure that you get the pickling video. And for those that can join us, we'd love for you to continue until we finish pickling.
I'm gonna do a 2-second pickling. So pickling, knife cut. Wash the figs. We like to cut them in wedges, so that way you get some of the seeds and then I like to put it into a jar. At work, we tend to put everything, because we're starting long-term, we put it either in a glass jar. Yeah, of course we use plastic Cambros. I try not to, but the stuff, you know, we only have so much of it. It's hard to store, but in an ideal world, we store everything in glass and metal, preferably glass. This is sterilized glass jars. If you guys have this is what our porridge comes in. So save those porridge jars. You don't need to return them to us. I spent a lot of money on them, so please use them. Please reuse them. Use them on. It's an awesome pickling jar. So sterilized pickle jar. We also use what we call a 6-pan. Fantastic for pickling. The way this pickle works, it's super easy. 2 parts vinegar, 2 parts water. So it's about 400 grams of each. This is what 400 grams looks like. 400 grams is about a pint. I have a scale right here. When we write recipes, we tend to do everything in grams. It's a lot easier because between grams and milliliter, it's all in increments of 1,000. So it's, you know, it's like you can say this is 400 grams, or you can say this is, you know, 400 milliliters. Okay, so or 4/10 of a liter. So we want about as much water, and then you pour it on. The reason we heat it up is because the hot, two things. Even when you're doing a cold brine, we always heat it up first. The reason you heat it up is because it kills anything that could be out there. And the second thing is we like to dilute. We like to bloom our spices. Spices don't bloom when the liquid's cold. It usually blooms. We either roast it or we put it in a hot brine and it blooms. Blooming is just letting the flavors come out and the aromatics become itself. So it's really important to make it hot. So we would put this amount. Let me see if I have a pot. Tiny little pot. Super easy. 400 milliliters. And then 400 milliliters. You guys can't see a scale right now, but there's a scale. You do about 400 milliliters of water. Surprise, surprise, it's the same amount as the vinegar. So it's 50-50. Sugar, it's about a quarter of that. Pretty easy ratio. Pour that all in. Along with the recipe that you guys have, I made a mistake. I put too much coriander seeds. It's 20 grams of coriander seeds. So change that in your recipe. 20 grams of coriander seeds. Coriander seeds are in season right now, so if you guys find green coriander seeds, pick them and use them. They're just cilantro flowers, but pick the coriander seeds. Put that in there. 200 grams of salt. You can use a little less salt if you want. We like, you know, this is tried and true for us. You pour that in there. You bring all of this up, bring it to a complete boil. While it's coming to a boil, you're gonna prep. I'm gonna put it on the stove. This recipe literally takes 5 minutes. While that's prepping on the stove, I should be talking about mise en place, which means, you know, keep your space clean and have everything you need. The cup we decided to use for this is a wedge, just because you get both the spongy and the crispiness, nappiness at the same time. We're using both the leaves and the fruit. The leaves are, these are pre-washed. Just take the leaves, you know, fold them up, smell them, smell everything. You put about as many leaves as you want. They smell amazing. You just stuff them in there. You put the fruit on top. Fill it up to as much as you want. You're gonna get about a quart of liquid. So, you know, use it. See, the fruit, this is bad, don't use it. But if you were at home and you're like, oh, you know, I just don't want to use, I will, if I'm not serving it at the restaurant, I just don't like to waste, I will cut around and I'll just use it. That's the great thing about being at home. You can use, you can cut things unevenly. You'll see at the restaurant, our whole team comes from fine dining, so we are really, we've been trained to be really specific with our cuts, and you want to cut things about the same size so they cook evenly or they pickle evenly. But you'll see things that are funny cut, they're intentional. Maybe things that turn out like this, we got a batch like this, but we still wanted to use it, we'll cut around the good part. And that's why the cuts are kind of funny. It comes to a boil, you pour this in. I have a really intense, let's see if I can bring the camera over here. I have a really intense stove at home, so it boils super quick. Can you guys see it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to do it on really high when I'm in a hurry. It's already boiling.
This is so great. Everyone is really enjoying this pickling session. I think we could spend a whole half day with you.
Well, maybe I should have more pickling classes. And then
yes.
So make sure you stir it or whisk it. Because when you don't want to see any sugar grains, you want to make sure. I don't know if you guys can see this. But you want to
We're
make sure
getting
there's
a lot
no-
of yes on pickling classes.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. And we can even get more advanced. Maybe we'll do fermentation classes. Fermentation, this vinegar is
Oh, we lost your video.
Oh, it's because I have no more batteries dying and everything. I have very bad technology. There you
Okay.
go. Okay. We only have 10%. We only have 10%. Let's see if we can do it. And basically you just fill it up. There's a lot. I like to use a lot of aromatics. That's a secret between a lot of times between a home cook and a restaurant cook is you have no idea how much aromatics you put in there. Like sometimes you're like, why does it taste so good when I make it, when you have it at the restaurant, it's not the same as at home? Because at the restaurant, we use spices and everything. Everything that we use, we do it with abandonment. We're like, oh, okay, well, if it needs to taste good, it needs to taste good. We don't really hold back. Because, you know, I only know this because my mom, she's like, you're using so much. Like, what? This is like an insane, like, why did you use like $40 of cardamom on this one dish? And I'm like, yeah, but this one dish is amazing. And it needs $40 worth of cardamom. So that's kind of the restaurant philosophy. You know, if we're going to serve it at the restaurant, we kind of do things with abandonment just to make sure it smells good. Not negligent, but it is pretty luxurious. Okay. So that's kind of the basic premise, right? But had I had more time, I would have filled this up. Oh man, I wish you guys can smell it. It smells like cut grass. And there's a lot of coriander, and it's just going to impart a nice green flavor. And that's it. And that's literally, it goes from that. We let it cool down. Then after 3 or 4 days, it looks like that. This is what Chef Connie did at the restaurant. So, and then you taste it, always with something clean. I have clean chopsticks over here. It just tastes like, it's so magical. And that's that. Crust is really good.
So one final question is, if the recipe stays on the counter or goes in the fridge for this specific recipe?
It stays on the counter until this is cool. Don't put things in the fridge. Is that the question? And don't put things in the fridge. Don't put things in the fridge immediately because this is hot. Putting something cold, it'll crack or it'll explode. So let this come, sit this. If it was a health department, they will tell you to run this under cold water, get the temperature to something you put in the fridge. But I'm sorry, you guys. But yeah, once it cools down, put it in the fridge. You can, because they're pickled, they can sit outside for a little bit, but being a restaurant, we want food safety is really important to us, so refrigerate stuff. And you can keep, this can sit in the fridge for like a week or two. It'll taste better over time. It's really good it's really good with noodles. It's good with banh mi. It's really good on porridge. Okay.
We just want to thank you so much. I see a lot of requests for pickling and fermentation classes, so I think this will not be the last time we see you with this group of wonderful women and non-performing folks on the call. The Women's Foundation, we just really want to thank you for spending this time with us. And thank you everyone who joined us today. We will be sending out at least the pickling part of the video and the recipe, and any future classes that you may be holding for pickling. We'll make sure that everyone gets our notice. Again, thank you everyone for joining our monthly Leading with the Heart series. We hope that you'll join us next month. Bia, do you want to close out with anything else?
Absolutely. I just want to say, Min, thank you so much. And I want to close with your quote, let's bring joy to the world together. Leading with the Heart is really a series and a gathering to bring grassroots women and women identified and genderqueer folks throughout the state to really come together to take care of ourselves, to take care of the state, to lead the state into justice. And Ming, your ability to talk about the justice issues and how we need to think about food. Hi, Malcolm. How we need to think about food in a different way, and how we need to really center justice in terms of paying those who are really taking care of us by picking the food, bringing the food, cooking the food, and serving the food for our communities is really, really important. So thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining us for Leading with the Heart, and join us for next Leading with the Heart, which will be on August 19th. Y muchísimas gracias por todos, y muchas gracias otra vez.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Women's Foundation.
Thank you, everybody.